So yes, Cody Rhodes is a champion again, and it seems like a lot of people online are really not happy about this. I a part of me kind of like empathizes with it. Okay, I'll be honest. When that so yeah, basically, I'm going to try and be kind of like the voice of reason here, though, because yeah, I gotta admit that. But when the match was over, yeah, I did feel a little bit of disappointment. For Drew McIntyre, I have to be honest with you. But at the same time, I did not hate it as much as a lot of people online seem to. So I'm just going to try and kind of like pick through that this match and the kind of like online kind of backlash of this and try and kind of like rationalize it as best I can. So yeah, let me just start off by saying that in terms of the match itself, in terms of in-ring ability, I thought it was fantastic, right? It ticked all the boxes. We had basically it kind of like escalate obviously beyond the ring, to the timekeeping area. We had basically things being brought out from under the ring. We had Cody and Drew trying to hit each other with each other's finishing moves, and this was a really stressful match to watch, I gotta say. And I feel like the rule of thumb is I think if a match is being quite stressful to watch, and I think the two performers you're watching have to be doing something right. Okay, so I feel so yeah. In terms of the match, in terms of the stakes and how immersive it was, and I thought that it ticked all the boxes. I think that it you know it did a really good job. Um, the and I mean, look, I don't think any of us can really be upset about getting Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton at WrestleMania, okay? Because I think that is an absolute banger match, right? I think that the history that Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton have really kind of makes it work as well. With Randy Orton be kind of like a bit of a mentor to Cody, I think that you absolutely I think that the build to this could be really intriguing. Okay, so I think that it could be really interesting. So there's a part of me that feels like it's the right decision as well, but I can understand people's that being upset about this, okay? Because, well, I do have to concede that the execution of this has not been great, okay? Personally, I would have preferred WWE to do this experimental stuff with the title, kind of like around. And fall winter type thing where you basically have you could have basically put the title on Drew McIntyre, say like WrestlePalooza, and then you got all these PLEs coming up like Crown Jewel, like Survivor Series. You got Royal Rumble, you've got Elimination Chamber, you got On the Road to WrestleMania. A lot of these PLEs where the champion's title defense is not the main event. They've got their own main events. So it can kind of the title can afford to take a bit of a backseat between that period. So you could have just had Drew have a more lengthy period. See if Jacob was obviously fit to return, you could have inserted him into it. Maybe you could have put the title on Jacob as well. Maybe you could have had I think that was a period where you could have done this real experimental stuff with so yeah, basically I can understand them sort of making fans being upset that they've made this bold decision to put the title on Drew, and it had such a short space of time before just putting it back on Cody, which kind of like sees I think people are just maybe a little bit fatigued over, and I think that that is key, right? Because I think that people are making also the argument that it has created this little plot hole as well, with being basically there wasn't meant to be a rematch clause. And I can't, on the one hand, I kind of like that. I think that is totally true, right? But I do feel like that, WWE are known to do this. They did this just last year, obviously, with on the road to WrestleMania, following Bianca Belair's win at Elimination Chamber, and she was set up to be face off against Io Sky, and then we had Rhea Ripley kind of shoehorning herself into that feud, and we basically had Bianca Belair essentially making this argument, making this part of a kind of a conversation, where Bianca Belair was basically like, well, excuse me, no, I won the Elimination Chamber, that makes me first in line. You can make somebody else first in line as well, because otherwise, what is the point of the Elimination Chamber, right? And she got booed for it, right? And we're all kind of like wondering, why are you booing her? like she's just speaking the truth, and yeah, who would have thought that somebody as an over baby face who has a star power, Bianca Belair, would just be booed, just for stating facts, right? So, and obviously WWE do look at obviously crowd reactions and stuff like that. So maybe they did go into this looking back at that and going, well, people don't care about the sanctity of this elimination chamber clause. So, we can just sort, as long as they get a banger match, at the end of it, which obviously we totally did at last WrestleMania, because obviously Bianca, Rio, and Io put on one of the best women's matches we've seen in the industry. So I don't know, but maybe off the back of that, maybe they did go in. This is maybe why they haven't kind of tried to come up with some BS ruse to kind of like just try and explain it away, kind of thing, because we kind of basically because they've got this idea that the fans just don't really care, okay, about the sort of them breaking that sanctity of the elimination chamber, as long as it's in the name of getting a banger match, which I think there is a part truth to, okay, but I do feel like that, because I say that because I have this sneaking suspicion that if this had kind of like happened sort of the other way around, and at the Elimination Chamber they had gone with the obvious choice and they had Cody Rhodes win the chamber, and then we basically had forced Randy Orton into this title defense on title match against Drew McIntyre on SmackDown, and then Randy won the title, and we were kind of like here that way, I don't think people would have been as mad about this, okay? And I do feel like that there is a little bit of, I do think that there maybe there is this online segment, okay? It because obviously when Cody won here, it created this massive pop from the crowd. So it's one of those Jey Uso things, right? It's one of those you can't look too deep into, okay? Because if you look at the way Jey Uso gets treated online, you could think like, oh my God, the fans absolutely hate Jey Uso. And then you actually tune into Raw and you're like, my God, he's so over, right? So, the connection he has with the crowd is there for all to see, and it's kind of like the same with Cody. But just for my 2 pennies worth, I do think a Cody comes off as a more engaging character when he's chasing the title rather than when he has it. So there's a part of me that feels disappointed in that sense. But yeah, essentially, I do think that there is a little bit of a fatigue of Cody Rhodes being champion again, or at least at the very least, maybe as this segment of fans who just feel as it's a little bit uncreative, maybe to put the title back on Cody, at least with this soon, I think. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this has not been executed in the best possible way. I'll concede that. The road has been really bumpy, but the destination's the same. Do you know what I mean? it's we're still getting Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton at WrestleMania. So while the ride has been rough, we're still going to Disneyland. You know what I mean? So it is kind of like sometimes I will kind of like as some sort of consolation, I will refer back to obviously last year where we had the build for Rhea Ripley, Io Sky, and Bianca Belair, and that was terrible as well. And they're like, obviously that ended up being one of the greatest matches we've seen. So sometimes it's not it is about the destination and not the journey sometimes. So yeah, I would believe you to kind of take solace in that. But yeah, I mean, I think that also it's a decision that probably makes sense more from a booking type point as well, because we basically got I can imagine this world where they're trying to desperately sell tickets for WrestleMania, and they think, okay, so we need have like Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton as a main event, like just to star power the names. Obviously kind of like doing that as a one-on-one means that you free Drew McIntyre and Jacob for two up to have their matches also, so that fills out another match as well, so it helps to kind of fill out that card as well. So yeah, I just feel like it's, and that's really why I feel like I don't have any evidence of this. I can only obviously go based on my personal inkling on this, but yeah, I do think that this is absolutely a much more of a corporate decision. We've had all this, I say that because obviously we've had all part of this backlash online has been obviously people kind of calling Cody Rhodes Cody Hogan and everything. It seems maybe we moved on from Becky Lynch now, and now it's over to Cody. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I don't know, okay, but just based on my personal gut instinctive this, I don't think a Cody Rhodes has a problem with putting people over, right? I don't think that that's the problem here, right? I don't think that it's one of those situations where Cody just wants to be the champion and all of this. I don't think that that's it. I do think that this is more of a company decision. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, I think that so in conclusion, I think, like I said, I think the match was solid. I think that it does mean we're getting Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton at WrestleMania, and I don't think any of us as wrestling fans can be upset about that. But yeah, I understand that there are holes here, there are criticisms that you can make about, at least in terms of how it was executed. Okay, I do. I do understand that. So yeah, I mean, moving on. Like, so what else did we get in this episode of SmackDown? So we had basically we had another stellar backstage segment from Danhausen, just going from the sublime to the ridiculous here, where we basically had Danhausen going up to Nick Aldis with more demand housings. He was basically asking for a mentor. Nick Aldis was basically like, well, that's not really kind of like my role. And then just so happens that he comes across a Miz. Obviously, we know the Miz is kind of like this gatekeeper at this point, who basically, whenever there's a new talent to kind of put over, they have to kind of go through Miz. So this is a situation, and like I said, Miz sold this interaction perfectly, to be honest with you. And he was like, I'm not going to mentor you. And then he was basically like, well, Dan House was basically like, well, you better think it's about that, because otherwise I will curse you, and you remember what happened with Dom Mysterio when I cursed him. So, like I said, I just think that going forward, I hope they do follow through with this, because I think that this could be a great dancing partner for Danhausen. I think they could be absolutely fantastic together. So yeah, I'm kind of like looking forward to that. We basically finally had Johnny Gargano come out of his sort of catatonic state, whatever the hell that was, and he basically comes out to the ring and basically makes an open challenge, and who answers that open challenge but Femi. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Johnny Gargano is just getting completely, I don't like to say that, I'm not one of these people who kind of like look at particular wrestlers in WWE and going, oh, WWE are trying to bury them. They're absolutely buried just because they lost a match or whatever, But Jesus Christ, like, I mean, I can't help but, I mean, I think that Johnny Gargano still has quite a bit on his contract to go. But yeah, I do kind of like feel like, just, we've had Champ obviously go to AEW, and just when you contrast and compare, and obviously I'm not trying to get into any tired WWE versus AEW debate here neither, but just it's, for the sake of the kind of the lens on the whole Johnny Gargano stuff. If you look at how Johnny Gargano is being treated now, or being utilized in WWE, should I say, and the way that AEW are utilizing Ciampa, it's night and day. It really is. So yeah, and I do feel bad for the guy, because I do think that the guy does have potential, right? I really do. I still remember from watching Johnny Gargano before he got called up in his NXT days, and so the potential is there. It's just, and I don't see any reason why necessarily, now that SmackDown is back to 3 hours, you can't utilize that more. But yeah, it just is, obviously creatively WWE have other ideas and other interests. So going to another like big talking point of this episode of SmackDown that people don't seem to be too happy with. So we got this little promo between Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley as well, right? Which people didn't really, I think, like also. So yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna say, I quite liked it. Okay, I know I'm on a bit of an island with that one, but yeah, I thought it was fine, right? Okay, I accept that it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. I accept that it was kind of like a bit of a weird. It was a bit nothing where we're basically kind of like just talk about each other's bodies. But yeah, I did like it when Rhea said the difference between you and I, though Jade, is that your body is just basically there for vanity, whereas I basically work out because I'm a fighter. I thought there was some fire in that, but I thought it was fine, right? I get that the people want more from this feud. I'm sure we're going to get more from this feud. So I can understand how maybe that this was just, didn't really meet some people's expectations, and they were a little disappointed by that. If you say to me, I really didn't like this, I could totally understand it, right? But I do think that I do think, we still got by 5-6 weeks till WrestleMania. So I think, there's still time to kind of like build and just, do more things. Or rather, I say that, maybe not, because after this we did basically have follow Jade Cargill backstage, and who does she bump into but Meechin and B-Fab, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, I can't do this again. I can't. I'm like there has to be a middle ground here, doesn't it? I Jesus Christ, like how did we get like how you oh god, right. So yeah, basically here we are, right? Okay, so Jade Cargill, basically she's in the main event of WrestleMania. Well, she's not. I doubt this is going to be the main event, so not the main event, but she's at WrestleMania defending her title against Rhea Ripley, obviously the biggest female star that WWE has at the minute, at least certainly one of them. And then you basically trying to keep pulling her in this fit of feud with like Meechin and B-Fab respectively, and I don't know who benefits right from it, because obviously the I'm sure I've said this before, I'm sure everybody has, but the way that and I don't mean this disparagingly to Meechin and B-Fab neither, because of course I respect everybody on WWE for for the athletes that they are, but yeah, just the way that they're kind of showcased, the way they're utilized by WWE, just putting them in these filler feuds with Jade Cargill doesn't do anything for Jade Cargill. It doesn't make her look any more dominant or destructive, because of the way and I don't think that it does Meechin and B-Fab any favors neither. So I don't think, I don't know who this benefits. I just think that you're just continuing with these kind of squash feuds that nobody is really interested. Nobody was really interested in to start with, but now it's just kind of like it's just so that was the one aspect of it that I have to say I can't defend that I just I really didn't like. We had a better backstage segment between Randy Orton and Sami Zayn as well, because we basically had Sami Zayn that continued to kind of try and address with Randy Orton with his kind of like holier than thou thing of going, well, Cody's your friend, so how could you kind of like take advantage in that way? And we basically have Randy who was basically essentially going, well, maybe that's the thing that's held you back all this time. So I do think that we are moving towards a Sami Zayn heel turn, and the way that's more like we got it back. We have got a Sami Zayn heel obviously before in the Vince McMahon with conspiracy theory character and stuff like that, but I think it will be much more solid and much more I think we are moving towards a Sami Zayn heel turn, and then and so yeah, basically we had a men's qualifying match as well for the tag team titles, and this involved the Wyatt Six and Los Gars. I'm not even going to try and get the matches in order because I know I'll forget it. But basically, we had Los Garza involved here, who hadn't been seen for God knows how long. So yeah, we basically had Fraxium here. We had the Motor City Machine Guns in here. We had the Wyatt Six, and we had Damian Priest and R-Truth as well. And I feel mixed on this, okay, because I think that in terms of the matches itself and the execution of it, I thought it was really solid, right? I can't blame this match because it did this qualifying match did everything I'd want a qualifying match to do, okay? The only thing that I didn't really, one thing I find a bit strange was that it was similar to how we had the men's qualifying match on Raw as well, where we for says, and we were basically like, and we had Otis and Tozawa win, and I was like, the fact that you can have Otis and Tozawa come out as a winners here and be the number one contenders for the Usos, kind of like just accentuates how much the men's tag team titles is lacking here. And I thought that this was a similar sort of situation, right? I mean, I do think that, but I think it may be worse because I think that we had Los Garza pull in a real kind of like Iron Man or Iron Tag Team, I guess, in performance where they got like two or three like eliminations on the trot, and it was like, the Lost Guys are a tag team who I've never basically been a big fan of, but I can respect them, right? I can admire the stuff that they do in the ring, and for on to that end, I think that they were a real credit to any wrestling company. Okay, but yeah, I don't know why they haven't been utilized, especially seeing as we've had so much coverage of the Wyatt Six and MFTs, which has been just really tiresome. So I don't know. I can only hope that going forward that they can, that WWE basically use this as a kind of a springboard to kind of get them more to get all of the tag teams that were involved here more screen time, because yeah, Los Garza, Fraxia, Motor City Machine Guns, like we want to see or even like we had Damian Priest and R-Truth as well, who ended up becoming the victors here and becoming the number one contenders for those belts. you know um I think they need to draw a line under the MFTs and the Wired Six feud now, although I don't think we are, because we did have the MFTs kind of like intervene here as well to cost the Wired Six. So, and they do still have their lantern as well. So I guess, it's not over. I think that they just, the Wired Six just need to get that damn lamp back, and then we can call it a day, right? Because yeah, I think that there is. I think you can take Las Garza, you can take Fraxium, you can take Motor City Machine Guns, even Damian Priest and that troop. I think you can really take all of those tag teams and really build them towards something. They just need the kind of a runway to do that. So I can only hope that that's what transpires going forward. So we had basically Charlotte and Kiana James here having the matches. It basically come about because we basically had Nia Jackson, Lash Legend, come out to this like little celebration of becoming the new tag team champions, and then we basically had this basically cued Charlotte to kind of come out and go, well, excuse me, but if it wasn't for the fact that you intervened in our match against the Kabuki Warriors, then we wouldn't have lost those belts in the first place. So that should put us back number one contenders. This is when Julia and Kiana James came out as well, and Kiana was like, well, excuse me, but I had a match with Lash Legend and Charlotte Flair in the elimination qualifier match, and I beat them both, so that should make like, and I felt like that was a bit of a flawed logic. I was like, I don't think ever that the rules of team contendership kind of really still kind of like quite apply to this, basically Gallus this match. We had Julia eating the pin as well again. So I feel bad for Julia. I gotta say, I do feel like, I mean, obviously she had had a US title run, that didn't work out. So they put the title back on her. It seemed for the world that they were putting more confidence and more TLC to this second run of Julia. And then they sort of decided they wanted to push Kiana. So now, because they're pushing Kiana, they just seem to be having Julia become this full person. And I don't. I don't know. I don't know what, like, I mean, I kind of think maybe you should just have Kiana maybe turn on Julia and go after the title that way if you want to push Kiana. But yeah, I mean, there's been this talk about there's going to be Julia and Io Sky at WrestleMania. That's going to be their match, and I can see it. I think that I think that that can be an enjoyable match. I think that those they have two styles that really could complement and work well together. But again, it comes down to just how they're being utilized on WWE, right? Because obviously you got Io Sky, who is just a, absolute, tippity top, and basically we have Julia, who is also a fantastic talent, but just the way that they've been kind of used on WWE as becoming sort of night and day, and you've got Julia on this downward trajectory now where she's kind of like eating all of these pins, and so it doesn't really kind of like feel like a real big match for Io, although she would be having this match, I guess, for the title. It wouldn't kind of necessarily feel like it has the weight and the gravitas of a title match as well, because it's sort of like you still got Io kind of like still at the top of the game, and you've just got Julie on this downward trajectory. And if I didn't know better, I would think that Julie and Danhausen have had a meeting backstage, and Danhausen has cursed her as well, because I cannot think of any reason to that would justify this kind of downfall of Julia. Because I said it before that I've been saying that since she was called up from NXT, but she's a phenomenal talent, and she just I think she just again, like I was saying about the tag team, I think that they can really be built to be these big main contenders, but they just need the runway to kind of like do that. And I just think it's such a shame that they're not that these talents are not getting that, especially like I said, now that SmackDown has been extended to 3 hours. So we had Carmelo Hayes as well, defend against in an open challenge against Dr. Wagner, who had basically come up from AAA, I believe. I'm getting into when we get into kind of like TNA or AAA, we get into, was it TNA? I think it was actually, sorry, I think it was TNA. Sorry, with AAA and TNA, my knowledge is a lot more sketchy. Okay, so but I think we had yeah, so that was like interesting, because we basically had this ended up basically essentially being another luchador. So straight away I was kind of like really invested in. I really like luchador wrestling. It's that type of wrestling that I really appreciate, and in that sense I find it a bit weird that I haven't maybe given more of my attention to AAA and TNA and stuff. But yeah, I do feel like but yeah, I thought that this was a solid match. There wasn't any part of me that felt Carmelo was going to lose this. But yeah, I did just appreciate it for what it was, though. I did appreciate the quality on display here, and the in-ring performances. And yeah, we basically got a segment as well between Randy Orton and Trick Williams. I'm knowing what we know now, I'm not too sure how Trick Williams fits into all of this. I'm sure he's going to have a spot at WrestleMania, but I'm not too sure. I don't know if maybe you have basically Sammy against Trick, but I feel like that's a potential. But then I don't know why you would. Yeah, just know what we know now with Randy and Cody build. I felt it was a bit odd that they had inserted into it. I mean, I don't think I suppose somewhere along the lines it could turn to a triple threat, but I don't think that's going to be the play. I think maybe part of the play of like I said, the reason why they've just made it Cody against Randy is because I feel like maybe they feel they have been a bit too reliant on multi-mans recently, and like I said, having those one-on-ones just give them more opportunity to kind of fill their card out better. I think yeah, so yeah, I didn't hate it. I'm all down for Randy and Trick Feud, but yeah, I'm just not quite sure how it all kind of fits in, really. So so yeah, on the whole, guys, I thought that this was an okay episode of SmackDown. Like I said, I thought the main event and the Danhausen segment was were the strongest points. Although even to, like I said, the um, despite that, I think some of the criticisms of the creative decision or the way that it's been executed are valid. So yeah, basically, yeah, it was an okay episode of SmackDown. I don't think there's anything here that's going to be particularly stand out or kind of like live long in the memory. It kind of like came and it went, and yeah, just, like I said, my main hope is that just going forward that they can kind of like pick it up more, and like I said, utilize the men's tag teams and Julia and all of that more going forward, because they definitely do deserve more attention and more TLC than I feel what they're getting at the minute. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts on this episode of SmackDown was, and what your own little fan theories on going forward, all of our fun geeky stuff. Please let me know down in the comment section. And as always, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.